Hey friends, it's Sam from DIY Huntress, and welcome to the unofficial part 2 of this home office guest room makeover. Over the past few weeks, I've been working super hard to transform a bonus room in my parents' house into a combination home office and guest space for my mom to work in while she works remotely from home. In my last video, I tackled this DIY modern Murphy bed build. And in today's video, I will be tackling some DIY floating shelves as well as some other projects in this space. Now, I totally locked my mom out of this room for a couple of weeks, so I'm not only super stoked to show you the full reveal of this space, but I'm also so excited for you to see her reaction. There is so much to cover in this project, so enough talking, let's get started. Okay friends, so my mom is a physical therapist and she works with children that have disabilities, and right now she's working remotely from home, but she doesn't have like a real space to work in, so she's been working out of like the living room or the dining room. Actually, she has a session right now, like check out this working situation.
Dancing! Here we go. Dance! Freeze! Don't move! What? You are the best freeze dancer I have ever seen. You can move now.
Okay, like she's adorable. But anyway, so there is a guest room in my parents' house that is kind of just functioning as like that room where you just store things and close the door and pretend they don't exist anymore. Like, I know you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to show you this room. I think I'm going to transform this into like combination guest room office for her and make this like a really fun little space that she can work from home in. She is totally gonna disown me for showing you guys this room, but so here is the guest room, and it's a pretty decently sized space, but this bed just like comes out into the room so much, and then there's like a little office nook here. So I think what I'm gonna do is clear everything out because it's just like storing a lot of crap, literally, and only keep this desk because this desk is very sentimental. This is actually the first piece of furniture I ever built. Other than that, we're gonna take the bed out. I think I'm gonna build a custom Murphy bed for her here with some, you know, shelving maybe. We'll see when we get there, but definitely a custom Murphy bed here, and then add like a little seating area, her little working area, and then lots of floor space for her to do her exercises in. So, yeah, why don't we get started on this and see where we go from here. Sorry, Mom, for showing off this room. I hope you still love me. So I'm sure you get the gist from that intro, but essentially, long story short, my mom is in need of an office and this room is in need of some desperate help. So in order to kind of just tackle two things in one project, I partnered up with my amazing friends at the Home Depot to give my mom an epic little space to work from home that still allows us to have a space for guests when they come to visit. Now, in all fairness, a ton of the stuff in this room actually belongs to myself and my other half. We actually lived here for about a year in between leases on apartments, so a lot of this stuff did end up going into our storage unit or our new place. But as for everything else that kind of needs to stay within the house, I did make some room temporarily for it in the closet, and that did include actually some of my mom's stuff that she works with, which I'm gonna find a home for later. But once everything was pretty much cleared out, the only thing that was left to do was to break down the bed frame, and I decided that I wanted to donate this bed frame instead of just throwing it out, so I basically just took it apart in as many manageable pieces as I could and made sure to keep everything nice and neat. At some point in this process, though, I did realize that in order for me to kind of keep this thing intact, I had to work around it a little bit. So even though I was able to take most of the bed out of the room, I did have to keep some of it in place. But once that was out of my way, I then spent some time just spackling little holes and gaps and uneven things in the wall. I allowed that to dry, and then I sanded them flat and used a vacuum to just dust off all of the walls as well as the base molding and anything that was basically just dusty. At this point, though, it was then time to prep for paint, so I just covered anything that I did not want to get covered in paint, like the desk, which obviously was staying in the room, as well as the floor, and then moved on to the paint. So typically I'm more of like a blue tone, grayish, white paint girl, but my mom absolutely loves the beige tones. And even though beige tones are not always my style, it is her room. So I did end up ordering kind of like a happy medium color called Gray Mist from the Home Decorators Collection and Bear Paint. And I then poured it into a small Tupperware container to just start testing out the color on one of the walls in the room. If there were two things in this room that couldn't really be a surprise, one was the paint color and the other one was the Murphy bed, just because I did need some help with that, and you can see that in the video. So I did decide to paint pretty much an entire wall in this room as like a practice wall so she could check out the color. Of course, we ended up loving this color and keeping it, and I eventually moved on to painting the entire room in this color with 2 coats of paint. So luckily we actually painted the ceiling in this room less than 2 years ago when my parents moved in, which is great because I hate painting ceilings. But one thing that really needed some love was the radiator. So I decided to give it a little bit of a facelift. I started by removing any of the pieces that I could actually remove that were not stuck to the wall, and then I just sanded all of the pieces down pretty lightly and then also cleaned them up using a scrubbing pad. There were definitely a couple of tough spots with some old paint on them, like some of the color choices that were in this room were actually pretty fun to see on this radiator, but I scraped those off using a razor, and then I taped off anything that I didn't want to get covered in paint and began to just brush on a metal-specific primer for the radiator covers. At some point though, I did decide that I didn't like the look of the brush strokes, so I did go back in with a foam roller to just even everything out and make it look really nice and smooth. And after giving that primer some time to dry, I then went back in using a latex white paint and just painted 2 coats of white paint onto the covers the same exact way that I did with the primer. I then let everything dry and assembled it all back together once it was cured. Obviously, as you can see, I definitely taped off this section but still painted somehow above the tape, so I cleaned that up later. Now at this point I had taken some time away from actually working on the room itself and spent a couple of weeks working on this custom Murphy bed for the space, which is going to allow so much more room for activities. But you can check out that entire build on my channel. I've also linked that video below this video in the description as well. At this point though, with that Murphy bed out of the way, it was time to switch out the lighting. I actually hate the ceiling fan so much, so taking it apart was extremely satisfying. And I actually opted for a pendant light instead of a fan just because I wanted to make sure that the Murphy bed forever had clearance to come down from the ceiling without hitting anything. After cutting the power to this room and just like triple checking that everything was off, I then came back in the next day actually with the pendant light that I got from the Home Depot and Home Decorators Collection and hooked it up in the room. The reason I just had to wait till the next day is because it ended up being way too dark in the room to see what I was doing. It's seriously so fun to see how just changing out some lighting in a room completely changes the entire room. I'm back in like my teenage years when I didn't want my mom to come into my room. Keep out. No peeking. So there was a ton of scrap wood left over from the Murphy bed build, specifically so much 3/4 inch plywood. So I decided to use what I had on hand to create some floating shelves to frame in the Murphy bed. Now, when I envisioned these in my brain, I just saw these really cool, chunky floating shelves with industrial brackets, and I was actually able to find the exact kind of brackets I wanted at Home Depot, but I really wanted to use this leftover wood, so I decided to laminate 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood together to make a really beefy 1.5 inch thick piece of wood. And I did that using a ton of wood glue and also a ton of clamps. And honestly, with all of the lumber that I had left over, I was able to get 6 solid shelves out of the scrap wood, which was awesome. And in terms of measurements for these shelves, I ended up measuring from the wall to the Murphy bed, and that's how wide my shelves ended up being. And then the depth of the shelf just depended on which shelving brackets that I was able to find at Home Depot. And I was able to cut all of those measurements the next day after just letting these shelves sit and dry for a while, and I cut them on my table saw as well as my miter saw. Once all my pieces were cut, they looked great, but the whole purpose here is to make them look like solid pieces of wood, and a little trick that I love to use when making plywood look like solid wood is to use edge banding. Luckily, I still had some of this 1.5 inch thick edge banding left over from my cabinet build that I did about 6 months ago on my channel, and I had just enough to be able to do the front face, which is perfect because the other parts of this shelf will be hidden by the Murphy bed or by a wall. And just like with any edge banding product, I applied it using a hot iron, pressed it into place, and then sanded everything down to make it look seamless. I then stained the top, bottom, and front portion of these shelves with the same color that I used on the Murphy beds, and as those dried, I then moved on to actually custom painting some screw heads to match the brackets that I got for the shelves. They were the right screws but the wrong color, so I just spray painted them to make them match, and after those dried as well, it was time to start installing the shelves. Oh, perfect? No way. Winner! That never happens. I'm gonna take that. So as you can see by me being totally stoked by finding the studs in this wall, I pre-drilled and screwed in these brackets to whatever studs I could find. I was able to get 2 on the left side of the bed, but was only able to get 1 on the right side of the bed, so I did use drywall anchors for those. But either way, once the brackets were in place, I was able to drop the shelves on top of the brackets and then attach them to those brackets using a drill and those screws that I painted black. Once I was done building those shelves, I was pretty much done with the bulk of the work in the room, so at this point I replaced any trim work that needed to be replaced on the sides of the Murphy bed, caulked any seams between the trim work and the wall, and also took some time to paint the trim a bright white color and painted the closet door the same to match. In fact, the only thing I pretty much didn't do at this point was touch up the walls at all, because I knew I would still have to be moving in some furniture, and I know myself well enough to know that I'm gonna have to touch up the walls once I do that anyway. But after letting everything dry, it was then time to start working on some other portions of the build that I was really excited about, like moving in and building some of the furniture that I picked out for the space from Home Depot's website. And if there was one piece of furniture that I chose for this space that I was the most stoked about, it was this dresser from Home Decorators Collection. I actually stained the Murphy bed to coordinate with this piece specifically because it is so gorgeous. Let's be real for a second here. After weeks of working on that Murphy bed, I was so ready to work on something that was a little more straightforward and to the point. And luckily, that's exactly what this dresser build was. So I was actually able to get this done in an afternoon after my full-time job. I know I talk a lot about fitting projects in on the weekends or in the evenings after my full-time job. And since my mom's job has already picked up and started, I really wanted to accelerate this project and get things done for her. So hanging curtains was one of those things that was really easy to get done after I got off of work. I also spent some time in the same afternoon and evening hanging up some other things like this adorable mirror for the space and a couple of shelving units as well. But in terms of talking like time-saving techniques, one of the things that really helped with this project as a whole is that pretty much everything you see in this room I was able to order on Home Depot's website. And not only was everything delivered straight to my parents' house, pretty much everything that I ordered from Home Decorators Collection also came with the hardware that I needed to put it together or hang it on the wall, which was a total time saver. But in terms of picking things for this space, I wanted it to feel light and airy and bright in the room, but I still also wanted to incorporate some storage options for her to put her physical therapy equipment, like these amazing shelves. Like seriously, how cute are they? I kind of want to steal them, but I'm not going to because I love my mom and that would be rude. While a lot of the things that I ordered from Home Depot for this room were things that just went right on the wall or in the space, I actually decided to customize a couple of really awesome frames that I got online for my mom's office space above her desk. Now, I'm about to date myself so hard right now, but I started my website in 2012, and one of the first projects, if not the first project I did on my website, was basically just taking some frames that I thought looked really cool and turning them into some organizers for an office space. Essentially, what I did was just change out all of the picture frame centers for things like a corkboard or a chalkboard or a whiteboard. And as you can see, for the corkboard portion, I did this using an adhesive corkboard that I applied to the actual piece of cardboard that comes on the back of the frame. I then cut it to size and then place it back inside the picture frame. I also decided to modify another one of the frames and turn it into like a makeshift whiteboard simply by just taking a white piece of paper and placing it in the actual glass itself, and you can use a dry erase marker on glass and it works beautifully. And for the third frame, I decided to go with a chalkboard, and I actually took the glass out of the frame, sanded it down very lightly, and then applied a chalkboard paint to the frame and allowed it to dry overnight. And once it was dry, I then placed it back into the frame and then hung up the frames in her office over her desk space. I don't know, I just feel like this is a really cute way to make some office decor without having to settle for the things that you see in an office supply store. These frames are actually really adorable. At this point, I really wanted to do one more DIY project for this space, and I still had a little bit of scrap wood left over from that Murphy bed build, and I decided to make some custom artwork for behind the Murphy bed. Cutting these plywood pieces down to size, sanded them nice and smooth, and then used a bright white stain to just give them a little bit of a pop of color. I've basically been seeing these adorable sun and moon canvas print things all over Pinterest and decided to make my own version. So I used acrylic paint to create a couple of different mountainscapes that went across both of these plywood canvases, and then painted some sun moon shaped things on them. I changed my mind 1,001 times. I wouldn't be surprised if I changed these art pieces again at some point, but for now I was really happy with the way that they turned out. But once I was done painting them, I then cut out some custom frames using actually some leftover pine from the Murphy bed as well, glued them onto the pieces, and then attached them using brad nails before bringing them inside to hang them up. I get asked a lot about what kind of brackets I use when hanging custom artwork, and for this I actually use the same system that I use for my DIY floating nightstands. Essentially, it is a French cleat system where you screw one end of the cleat into the artwork and then screw the other end of the cleat into the wall. Excuse me. It's your bed now? Ah! I just made this bed. This is so rude. You're really rude. The pillows too? So after lowering the bed and then having to kick Titan off of the bed because he clearly thinks that it's his new dog bed, as if I didn't just make him one on my channel, by the way, I enlisted the help of a familiar face on this channel, my little brother Jordan, to help me hang these things because I wasn't really sure what spacing I wanted. It's also kind of hard to hang things while standing on a foam mattress, so just having another set of hands there was super, super helpful. Besides, I secretly think he actually likes helping me with my projects, but don't tell him I told you that. But anyway, after hanging up the artwork, it was then time to basically just clean up Titan's mess and make the bed again, and then place the final of the bedspread onto the guest bed to make it really feel like a warm and cozy space. Also, may or may not have already called dibs on the first nap in this bed. After hanging the artwork and getting the bed ready, I was then able to close it back up, and at this point it was kind of just time for some final touches in the room, including this gorgeous area rug, which I actually applied to the floor using a rug tape, and this is so that the rug won't slip around when my mom is doing her therapy sessions on the floor. One other thing I really wanted to give my mom for this space was a comfy armchair to work out of. Actually, when I asked her what she really wanted in her home office, the first thing she said was an armchair. So I'm really happy that I was able to make this happen for her, and it was so easy to put together, and it's also so super comfy. I also decided to pair this chair with some side tables that double as storage for things like her yoga mats. And once those pieces of furniture were in, it was then time to work on some small details like adding lights to the side of the Murphy bed for guests, and then adding all of those little special touches like keepsake boxes so they can store things while they stay with us. I also ended up finding a door handle for the closet door that matched the handles I made for the Murphy bed, so I also made sure to install those. Now, in case anybody needs a reminder, at this point my mom has been locked out of this room for several weeks, so I was so excited to be placing all of the finishing touches in this space and slowly stealing all of her physical therapy equipment to start putting into place as well. It was during all these minor touches and details that I began to get super excited about showing her her new home office and her guest space. Okay, boys, you ready to show mom her new office room, office space? Guest office? I don't know, we ready to just show mom her new place? Yeah, let's do it, come on. That looks so different, right?
God, I love it.
Okay, good. That's the most important part.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is the best. Oh my God, the lamp is so cool.
Being able to transform this space for my mom was literally the best. She gives so much for so many people and gives so much to so many people through her job and her personal life and just by being an awesome mom. So being able to gift her something in return for everything she does is just an awesome feeling. I am so stoked that she is so excited about this space. In fact, after I was done filming this, she immediately moved her stuff into this space and made herself right at home, which is basically the best compliment ever. In fact, I literally hope to never see the day where I walk through the front door of her home and see her having a therapy session with her kiddos in the living room or the dining room. Like, those days are long gone. I also know firsthand how difficult it was for her to get organized during this remote learning period, especially not having an office space. So I'm really excited that she now has a spot to store all of the things that she needs to for her therapy sessions. And let's be real, I really feel like the coolest part of this project is the fact that she can still have a guest room space, but not lose the space she needs to do her therapy exercises in her home office. Murphy bed for the win. I really hope that if you are someone who is struggling to find some space in your home to work from home right now, or if you're working from home, that a project like this helps to give you some ideas as to how you can get creative about the space that you already have. And as always, if you're looking for information about what I contributed to this space or any of the projects that are in this space, you can find all of those details below this video in the video description. Regardless, friends, I really hope that you love this project as much as I did, and seriously, as much as my mom did. She still cannot get over it, which is the best thing ever. If you did, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell for more projects in the very near future. And as always, friends, thank you so much for the love and the support. I could not do what I do without you guys cheering me on. Until next time, friends, happy DIYing.